Welcome to Revenge by Eve. We've got a great story for you today.
I was standing in front of 200 people at my mother-in-law's charity gala when she announced that I'd stolen $50,000 from their family foundation. Money I'd never even known existed until that exact moment. Before this story goes any further, tell me, would you have defended yourself right there or done what I did? And as you listen, comment where you're listening from. I read everyone. My name is Eve Martinez, and 5 years ago I married into what I thought was the perfect family. I met Jacob Whitmore when I was 26, working as a high school English teacher in suburban Connecticut. He was 29, a marketing director at his family's luxury real estate development company. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, and he was everything I'd hoped for. Kind, attentive, genuinely interested in my work with students, and refreshingly down-to-earth despite his privileged background. The Whitmores were old money, not flashy wealthy, but the kind of generational wealth that whispers rather than shouts. Jacob's father, Richard, ran Whitmore Properties, a company his grandfather had founded in the 1950s. His mother, Caroline, was a socialite who chaired multiple charity boards and hosted fundraising events that raised millions for various causes. Jacob's sister, Vanessa, was 2 years older, a corporate attorney married to another attorney, living in Manhattan with their 2 perfect children who attended the best private schools. The family presented this image of Polish tradition and unshakable values. When Jacob introduced me to his parents after we'd been dating for 3 months, I was nervous. When I came from a working-class background, my dad was a mechanic, my mum a nurse. I'd put myself through college on scholarships and student loans. I wasn't sure how I'd fit into their world, but Caroline was warm during that first dinner at their estate in Greenwich. "Jacob tells us you're a teacher," she said with what seemed like genuine interest. "What a noble profession. We need more dedicated educators." Richard asked thoughtful questions about my literature curriculum. Vanessa complimented my dress, made me feel included in family jokes. I left that evening feeling relieved. Accepted. Jacob proposed a year later on a weekend trip to Martha's Vineyard, at sunset on a private beach his family owned. The ring was a family heirloom, his grandmother's diamond, reset in a modern setting just for me. "My mother insisted you have this," Jacob said. "She says you're already part of our family." The wedding was elegant but not ostentatious. 200 guests at a country club, reception with a live band, everything tasteful and expensive but not showy. Caroline helped me plan every detail, and I was grateful for her guidance. "You're like the daughter I never had," she told me during a cake tasting. "Vanessa's always been so independent, so focused on her career. But you have such warmth." I felt lucky. I'd married a man I loved and gained a family that seemed to embrace me. We bought a house 20 minutes from his parents, a beautiful colonial that Jacob's father helped us secure at a good price through the company. I continued teaching. Jacob worked long hours but always made time for us. Sunday dinners at Richard and Caroline's became our routine. Those first 2 years felt stable, comfortable. I was building the life I'd always wanted. I should have known that comfort can be a trap. The first warning signs were subtle enough that I doubted my own perceptions. It started with small comments from Caroline. Nothing overtly cruel, just observations that somehow always left me feeling inadequate. "Oh, you're wearing that dress again. I remember it from Easter," she'd say at Sunday dinner, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Or, "Jacob dear, didn't your father mention that promotion opportunity? Such a shame the company can't offer those positions to just anyone. Merit is so important." I was just a teacher, never said outright but implied in countless small ways. Jacob would defend me but tepidly. "Mum, Eve's job is important." "Of course, darling. I said it was noble, didn't I?" I started noticing that family events were scheduled without consulting me. I'd find out about gatherings when Jacob mentioned them casually. "Oh, didn't I tell you? Mum's having a dinner party Saturday." "No, you didn't." "Well, it's just family, nothing formal." But when I'd arrive, There would be carefully planned seating arrangements, topics of conversation that excluded me, inside jokes I didn't understand. Vanessa started making comparisons between her life and mine. You know, Eve, I don't know how you manage on a teacher's salary. My mortgage alone is more than you probably make in a year. Vanessa, Jacob would say weakly. What? I'm just saying I admire her choice to pursue passion over profit. Choice. Like I was playing at teaching while they did real work. Caroline began requesting my time for her charity projects. Eve, dear, I need someone to help organise the gala silent auction. You have time during summer break, don't you? I wanted to be helpful, to prove my worth to the family. So I said yes. I spent my summer vacation cataloguing donated items, creating spreadsheets, coordinating with vendors. Hundreds of hours of work. At the actual gala, Caroline thanked our wonderful volunteers in a vague, collective way, but when the society pages covered the event, she was quoted extensively about personally organising every detail. When I mentioned feeling overlooked, Jacob sighed. You're being sensitive. Mom appreciates everything you do. But appreciation was never expressed to me directly. I also noticed that Jacob was changing. The man who'd been so attentive during our courtship was increasingly absorbed in work, in family obligations, in maintaining the Whitmore image. We need to attend this event, he'd say. It's important for the family business. Can't we skip just once? I'm exhausted. Eve, this is what being part of this family means. We show up. I was expected to show up, to smile, to represent the family well, but I was never quite allowed to be part of it. Things escalated dramatically after I decided to pursue my master's degree. I'd been accepted into a prestigious program for education administration with the goal of eventually becoming a principal or curriculum director. I was excited. This was my career, my ambition, my growth. When I told the family over Sunday dinner, the response was chilling. Caroline's fork paused midway to her mouth. Graduate school? How will you manage that with your responsibilities? What responsibilities? I'm a teacher. I can do evening classes. But what about Jacob? What about starting a family? Jacob and I had discussed children, but not on any specific timeline. We were only 28 and 31. We had time. We're not ready for kids yet, I said. Richard cleared his throat. Eve, at a certain point, a woman needs to prioritise what matters. Education is wonderful, but family legacy is paramount. My education is part of building our future? Is it? Caroline asked. Or is it selfish ambition at the expense of your marriage? I looked at Jacob, waiting for him to defend me. He was staring at his plate. Jacob, I prompted. Maybe we should discuss this privately, he mumbled. The conversation moved on. But I felt like I'd been slapped. That night, Jacob and I fought for the first time in our marriage. You didn't defend me, I said. They have a point, Eve. We've been married 3 years. People are asking when we're having kids. People? Or your parents? Does it matter? Maybe it's time to think about our priorities. My master's degree is a priority. More than our family. The word our felt loaded. He didn't mean our marriage. He meant his family, the Whitmores. I enrolled in the program anyway, and the subtle hostility became overt. Caroline stopped inviting me to her charity projects. You're so busy with school. I wouldn't want to burden you. Vanessa made pointed comments about women who prioritise career over family and how it always ends badly. At family gatherings, I was excluded from conversations. They'd discuss business matters, family properties, vacation plans, all without asking my input. We're thinking of spending Christmas in Aspen this year, Caroline announced one Sunday. That sounds lovely, I said. What dates? Oh, we've already booked, just immediate family. I looked at Jacob. Am I not immediate family? An awkward silence. Of course you are, dear, Caroline said. But the cabin only has 4 bedrooms, and with Vanessa's children. I understand, I said, standing up. I need some air. I spent Christmas alone in our house while my husband was in Aspen with his family. He claimed he'd tried to include me. But the arrangements were already made, Eve. What did you want me to do? Stand up for your wife? You're being dramatic. I started feeling like I was going crazy. Every hurt was dismissed as me being too sensitive, too dramatic, too demanding. The core betrayal came on a Saturday evening in November at Caroline's annual charity gala benefiting underprivileged children's education. The irony of that cause would later feel like a knife twisting. I'd helped plan this event for 3 months. Caroline had been insistent that I participate, despite my graduate school workload. It's for the children, Eve. Surely you care about that as an educator? How could I say no? I'd coordinated vendors, managed RSVPs, organised the auction, all while teaching full-time and taking 2 graduate courses. I was exhausted. The gala was held at an exclusive country club. 200 guests in evening wear, champagne flowing, a 10-piece orchestra. I wore a dress I'd saved for months to buy. Wanting to look appropriate for the occasion, Caroline looked stunning in designer everything. She worked the room like the professional socialite she was, greeting donors, thanking supporters. I stood with Jacob near the bar, feeling out of place despite all my preparation work. Halfway through the evening, Caroline took the microphone for her speech. She thanked various people, shared heartwarming stories about the children the foundation supported. Then her tone changed. However, I must address a difficult situation that has come to light. The room went quiet. I felt Jacob tense beside me. It pains me to share this, but transparency is essential when you've been entrusted with charitable funds. My stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but I knew this was about to be bad. We discovered a discrepancy in our foundation accounts. $50,000 has gone missing over the past 6 months. Gasps around the room, people shifting uncomfortably. After a thorough investigation, we've determined that my daughter-in-law, Eve, had access to these accounts through her volunteer work. The transactions coincide with her sudden enrollment in an expensive graduate program. The room spun. Every eye turned toward me. I'm heartbroken, Caroline continued, her voice breaking with practiced emotion. We trusted her, welcomed her into our family, and this is how she repays that trust, by stealing from vulnerable children. That's not true, I said, but my voice was weak, lost in the murmur of shocked conversation. Eve, Caroline said, looking directly at me with what appeared to be genuine pain. If you'd needed money, we would have helped. But to take from children? I didn't take anything, I said louder. I've never even seen the foundation accounts. The evidence is clear, Richard said, standing beside his wife. We have transaction records with your digital signature. I don't have a digital signature for the foundation. I was never given access. Perhaps it's best if you leave, Caroline said quietly. We'll handle this privately, as a family matter. We won't press charges, but please, just go. I looked at Jacob. Surely he would defend me. Surely he knew I hadn't done this. He was staring at his feet, jaw clenched. Jacob, I whispered, tell them. He looked at me finally, and what I saw in his eyes destroyed me. Doubt. My own husband doubted me. Maybe you should wait in the car, he said quietly. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I walked out of that ballroom with 200 pairs of eyes watching me, judging me, believing I'd stolen from children's education to pay for my own. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. That was the moment I stopped waiting for them to change. I sat in our car in the parking lot for 2 hours, waiting for Jacob. My mind was simultaneously racing and completely blank. When he finally emerged, he got into the driver's seat without looking at me. Did you do it? He asked. No. They have evidence, Eve. I don't care what they claim to have. I did not do it. We drove home in silence. Inside our house, Jacob finally faced me. My mother wouldn't lie about something like this. But I would. I don't know what to believe. I'm your wife, and she's my mother. The choice had been made, and I hadn't been chosen. I spent the next 3 days in a fog, I called in sick to work, I couldn't eat, I barely slept. I replayed everything in my mind. The volunteer work, the endless hours spent on Caroline's projects, how I'd never actually been given direct access to financial accounts. I'd only organised physical aspects of events. How could I have a digital signature on accounts I'd never accessed? And then clarity hit me like ice water. This was planned, deliberate. They'd set me up. But why? The answer came when I overheard Jacob on the phone with his mother, in his study with the door not quite closed. "I know, Mom. I know. You were right. She was never really one of us. The divorce will be quick. Yes, I understand about the prenup. Of course I'll protect the family assets. They wanted me gone. One, they'd created a reason that made me the villain, that absolved Jacob of looking like the bad guy for leaving me. I was going to be discarded as a thief, an opportunist who'd married above her station and shown her true colours. Not if I could help it. I didn't confront Jacob that night. I didn't scream or cry or beg. I started planning. First, I consulted with an attorney, not a local one, but someone 3 towns over who specialised in fraud cases. "Can they prosecute me without real evidence?" I asked. "They could try, but if you've never had access to those accounts, there's no legitimate way your signature could be on transactions." "What if they forged it?" The attorney leaned back. "That's fraud. If you can prove it, that's a serious crime." I needed to prove it. I also consulted with a forensic accountant. By using money from my personal savings account that Jacob didn't know about, the one I'd opened when I started grad school, just for textbooks and expenses. The accountant examined the foundation's public filings, which were required for their non-profit status. These transactions occurred over 6 months, he noted. But according to their volunteer roster, which they published in last year's annual report, you weren't listed as having financial authorization. Only board members had that access. So how could I have signed anything? You couldn't, unless someone with actual access created a false trail. My forensic accountant friend from college, someone I trusted completely, agreed to help me trace the money. Within 2 weeks, he'd found something interesting. The $50,000 hadn't actually disappeared. It had been transferred to a separate LLC, then used to purchase luxury items, designer furniture, art, jewellery. The shipping addresses, Caroline and Vanessa's homes, they hadn't just framed me. They'd stolen from their own charity and blamed me for it. I documented everything. Screenshots, transaction histories, shipping confirmations I accessed through a contact at one of the delivery companies. I also hired a private investigator to look into the Whitmore family finances. If they'd done this once, maybe there were other irregularities. There were. The foundation had been their personal slush fund for years. A money earmarked for children's education had funded their lifestyle. Vacations disguised as site visits, luxury items labelled as auction donations, cash withdrawals marked as emergency assistance to families. Hundreds of thousands of dollars systematically stolen from a charity over nearly a decade. And I had proof of all of it. The payoff came at Caroline's Christmas charity event, 3 months after she'd publicly destroyed me. During those 3 months, I'd filed for divorce, moved out of the house, been ostracized by everyone in our social circle who believed the Whitmore's version of events. I'd also lost my teaching job. The school board couldn't have someone accused of financial fraud around children. Never mind that I was never charged, never prosecuted. The accusation was enough. My reputation was ruined. My career was destroyed. My marriage was over. The Whitmores thought they'd won. They'd issued a public statement about not pressing charges out of familial compassion, which made them look magnanimous and me look guilty but fortunate. Jacob had filed divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences. The prenup I'd signed would leave me with almost nothing. I let him think I was broken, defeated. I showed up to the Christmas event uninvited. Security tried to stop me at the door. "I'm still technically Jacob Whitmore's wife," I said. "Until the divorce is final, I'm family." They let me in, probably to avoid a scene. I walked into that ballroom in a simple black dress carrying a folder. Caroline saw me and went pale. "Eve, What are you doing here? I came to support children's education, I said. Or isn't that what this event is for? Before she could respond, I walked to the microphone. Excuse me, I said. I have an announcement. The room quieted. Confused faces turned toward me. 3 months ago, I was accused of stealing $50,000 from the Whitmore Children's Education Foundation. I was publicly humiliated at an event just like this one. Caroline was moving toward me, Richard right behind her. Eve, this is inappropriate. I was never charged with a crime, I continued, because I didn't commit one. But I've spent the past 3 months investigating who did. I opened my folder. The money didn't disappear. It was transferred to an LLC called Prestige Holdings, then used to purchase luxury goods. Here are the transaction records. I held up documents. The items were shipped to Caroline Whitmore's residence and Vanessa Whitmore's Manhattan apartment. Here are the delivery confirmations with signatures. Murmurs through the crowd. Caroline's face was red. Furthermore, this wasn't an isolated incident. I have documentation showing that the Whitmore Foundation has been used as a personal bank account for nearly 10 years. Charitable donations meant for children's education have funded vacations, jewelry, designer furniture. This is slander, Richard shouted. It's evidence, I said calmly, which I've already provided to the IRS, the Connecticut Attorney General's Office, and the Charity Oversight Board. I imagine investigators will be contacting you soon. The room erupted, guests pulling out phones, reporters in attendance, scribbling notes. You did this, Caroline hissed at me. Oh, you stole that money and now you're trying to frame us. I never had access to your accounts, I said. You know that. You've always known that. You forged my authorization to cover your own theft, and you destroyed my reputation to hide your crimes. I looked directly at Jacob, who stood frozen near the back of the room. You let them do it. You chose them over me without even asking if I was innocent. You believed I could steal from children because it was easier than believing your family could be corrupt. I placed my folder on the podium. Everything's in here. Copies for the investigators are already filed. I just wanted you all to know, publicly, who the real thieves are. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, leaving the Whitmores to face the consequences of their own actions. The fallout was swift and devastating. For them. The Attorney General's office launched a formal investigation within a week. The IRS began auditing the foundation and the family's personal finances. Multiple news outlets covered the story. Socialite charity fraud made headlines. The society pages that had once fawned over Caroline now detailed her downfall. The foundation lost its non-profit status. Donors demanded refunds. Partner organizations severed ties. Richard's business faced scrutiny. Major clients pulled contracts, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Vanessa's law firm put her on administrative leave pending investigation. Her pristine reputation was shattered. And Jacob? He was named in the investigation as a board member who'd signed off on fraudulent transactions. His career in the family business became a liability. I received calls from the Attorney General's office thanking me for the evidence. The investigator told me they'd found even more irregularities once they started digging. This family stole close to $1 million from their own charity, she said. You did a good thing bringing this forward. My attorney helped me get the divorce settlement revised. The prenup was invalidated due to fraud. I'd signed it under the belief I was marrying into an honest family. I got the house, half of everything, and a settlement for defamation. I also got my job back. The school board, faced with the truth of what had happened, reinstated me with an apology and back pay. My reputation slowly recovered as the real story came out. People who'd shunned me sent apologetic messages. Jacob tried to reach out once. A text message. I'm sorry. I should have believed you. I deleted it without responding. The Whitmores lost everything they'd used against me, their pristine image, their social standing, their moral high ground. They'd ruined my life. So I ruined what they cared about most, their image. 2 years later, I'm 33 and rebuilding my life on my own terms. I finished my master's degree. I was promoted to assistant principal at my school. I bought a small house in a different town, one with no association to the Whitmores. I've started dating again, carefully, slowly, with much better instincts about red flags. I learned that family isn't just about blood or marriage. It's about who shows up for you, who believes in you, who defends you. The Whitmores taught me that sometimes people will try to destroy you to protect themselves. They'll use your trust against you, weaponize your kindness, and feel justified in doing so. But they also taught me that I'm stronger than I ever knew. I stood in front of 200 people and told the truth, even knowing it would be ugly and painful and difficult. I fought back when they thought I'd just disappear quietly. I refused to let their lies define me. They thought I'd be easy to discard, just a teacher, just someone who married above her station. They underestimated me completely. And that was their biggest mistake. If you were in my place, what would you have done differently? And don't forget to tell me, where are you listening from right now? This is Revenge by Eve, and your voice matters here.
Thanks for watching Revenge by Eve. We hope you enjoyed the story. See you soon.